Good morning, everyone. So we can start with again little breathing exercise to calm our mind, to quiet our mind. Make yourself relaxed, comfortable. Try to keep your back straight. Always helps to be more alert. Let your breath flow naturally. And keep your attention or the mind at the breath, watching mindfully. Once our mind is settled down, then we can try to reflect, contemplate. Until our mind is subdued and positive, nothing can seem to become perfect. Everything feel imperfect, not good enough, problematic, complicating. No matter where, no matter with whom, no matter what we do or other does. we find something to be unhappy about, always. We will always find something to be dissatisfied. On the other hand, when we train our mind, subdue our mind, transform into positive, when our mind is perfected, then we don't see and feel any imperfections. Nothing seems problematic, complicating, conflict. Wherever we are, with whomever we are with, whatever other does, whatever you do, doesn't become problematic to you, conflict to you. Doesn't disturb your mind. You can find just fine, happy all the time. All of those doesn't cause any kind of dissatisfaction, unhappy mind. So what we understand with that is whether we are unhappy, dissatisfied, or whether we are happy and joyful all the time. It doesn't depend on external conditions. Instead, it depends on internal condition, which is the state of our mind. Therefore, it is so crucial and important to pay more attention to our mind and taking care of our mind. Training the mind, transforming the mind. And to train and to transform the mind, we need to contemplate, meditate, practice correctly, continuously. For that, we need to continue to study, learn, continue to remind ourselves. For that very reason that I'm going to listen, not only listen, but if I find anything helpful, that I will try to implement in my everyday life as much as possible. May all of us coming here together to listen, to engage in discussion, reflection, contemplation. may all of this become cause and conditions to obtain our highest potential, the fully awakened state. So we can be greatest help, benefit to all sentient beings. Okay, so then we can do that.
Taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, once in English, twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye chodan soki chonam la janchu bardu dagni kapsuchi dagi chonen gepe sodnamgi jola penchir sange drupar sho sange chodan soki chonam la janchu bardu dagni kapsuchi Dagi chonen gepe sognamgi jola penshir sange drupar sho.
Again, good morning, everyone. And again, another nice, beautiful day. So we have been going through this mind training, specific text, 7-point mind training. We just started. And we finished the first 2 points. The first point in that is training the preliminary. And then second point is training into the bodhicitta, the awakening mind. And within that, there is 2 sections, training awakening mind of conventional or relative awakening mind and ultimate awakening mind. And we talk about within each of those practice, meditation sessions, post-meditation sessions, different practice. And with every meditation sessions, we start with preliminary, the actual meditation itself, and the end dedications. So we talk about that. And now we come to the third point of this practice. And the third point is how to transform adversities, circumstances into the path to enlightenment, or path to awakening. So yeah, maybe we go through the actually the verse from the text itself, and then we can talk about it. In the text, it says, when the environment and its inhabitants overflow with unwholesomeness, transform adverse circumstances into the path to enlightenment. Now, and there is another different, more easy translation. When the world is filled with evil, transform of mischiefs into the path of body or awakening, okay? So when we encounter, different challenges, obstacles, problem in our life. Sometimes we have issues our health issues, whether it's physical health, sometimes emotional health issues. Sometimes we have, challenges, difficulty in a relationship, whether it's between two partners, husband, wife, and girlfriend, or between parents, children, between siblings, between friends, between colleagues, those things happen time to time. It's natural when we live in samsara among unenlightened beings. It's going to happen for everyone. It's nothing exception for anyone. Everyone go through that. So that those things happens, Sometimes we have a problem, challenges with our financial situations, struggles, Sometimes we do better, sometimes, things doesn't go so well, you struggles. Sometimes you barely make it, sometimes you even have challenges, even barely making, Those kind of things happens, Sometimes, we are very respected, by others, and then sometimes we lose that, then we become object of people's criticisms, dislike. So that kind of, from liking to disliking, from being respectful to disrespectful, treating, regarding highly to treating badly, looking down. So again, these are part of life that we encounter and face, Sometimes, things happens, due to the climates, changes, destruction from earthquake, floods, fires, distractions from, freeze, health, all different things, and that create a lot of, maybe not in our personal life, but sometimes also, there's a lot of conflict, in the world, in the countries, so those are things, normally that what we call obstacles, adversities, challenges, difficult, distractive. So this is what, and so when such things happens, how to deal with that? How can we manage that mentally? How can we make those, when those things happen, how can we, instead of it becoming a cause of mental pain, and negativities, becoming cause to be depressed or angry, upset, hateful, resentments. So due to those circumstances, sometimes either we become very hopeless, depressed, feel like, things are going bad, worse and worse, then we started to become hopeless, we started to become depressed, mentally very low, down, in a very negative state. Or sometimes we become very upset and angry because of those situations, sometimes with ourselves, sometimes with others, very upset and angry and, even hateful, that kind of things. But either when we have those kind of feelings, negative emotions, it doesn't help us. It doesn't help others. It doesn't help the situations. It doesn't change the situation, how you feel about it. It doesn't change our reality of the situations just because you feel certain way, unless you take actions. And in some cases, by taking action, things can improve, solve. It's not about how I feel about it or not. It's changing the cause and conditions, So, but, by allowing ourselves to in those kind of negative state, then, it doesn't change the situation, it doesn't, but it makes us emotionally, mentally very negative, unhealthy, destructive, So here the teaching here is how to train your mind not to be in those states, but instead, because of those situations, how can we, make those situations to direct and transform our mind as a path to awakening. In other words, how can we transform those situations to awaken our mind with more compassion, to become more compassionate, to become more open-minded, and thereby turning or transforming into the path to awakening, And so that is what. So, as we mentioned before, when things happens, that recognize that, be aware of that, what is happening, what is going through, but then with that awareness and be mindful of what is happening, the pain that comes with that, then let that open your heart to understand and feel the pain of others who might be going through similar, even worse. Instead of being sucked into my problem, sometimes we get so sucked into, this is my problem, this is my pain, why it is happening to me, this and that. Instead, recognize that your pain and then let that help you to open your mind and direct towards others' pain who are going through similar or worse. I'm not only one, there are so many others who are going through similar situation, even much more worse. Try to understand their pain, try to feel their pain, and try to wish them to be free from all their pain and cause of those pain. Wish them all the good, happiness, whatever they need, temporary, ultimate happiness and cause of happiness. Wish them that from your heart. So when you have that feeling, you recognize their pain because of your own pain, you feel their pain because of your own pain. And then when you truly wish them to be free from all the pain and cause of pain, wish them to be happiness and cause of happiness truly from your heart, then now, you are awakening your compassionate mind, your loving kindness mind. We already have the seed of loving kindness and compassion mind. By doing that, now it is kind of blossoming, awakening that your loving kindness, compassions, and thereby, being in the path. And then you can try to do the Tonglen as we described before. If possible, then you can try to take the sufferings of others and cause of suffering yourself. We try to give and send all your happiness, all your virtues, all your positive qualities. Then, so you can, if you can, then also try to do Tonglen. So that is how we transform. That's how we transform into the path. As some master says, try to transform these distractive circumstances into constructive circumstances. In terms of your mind, at the moment you see this is distractive, but instead you transform into where you are able to see it is not distractive, but is a constructive. By looking from different perspective, different point of view. It is distractive in one area, but it is constructive in another area. So it is how your mind focus on. So it is how you focus on and how you label the situation, whether it is problematic or whether it is an opportunity. When someone closes the door, new door opens. Okay? You can get stuck. Someone closed the door. Or you can focus, new door has opened. Where you focus your mind. Situation change wherever you focus. Whether you focus, the door has been closed. Yes, this door is closed and this door has opened. Okay. You can focus, or the door has opened, or you can just focus on this door is closed. If you just focus on the door has closed, your mind becomes negative. If you focus on the new door has opened, your mind becomes positive. And with that positive mind, it helps your state of mind, your well-beings, your perceptions about things. So that is what is transforming about, focusing on the positive sides. And when you focus on that, then it doesn't become a problem. It becomes opportunity now. The problem transforms into opportunity. You see it as an opportunity, new opportunity, better opportunity. It is similar to that example of whether you see it half full or half empty. It's the same things, okay? If you see half empty, then it feels like something's missing. Your mind has a little bit more negative of something not enough. But when you feel half full, you feel positive. There's something, it's not empty, but there's something there full. It's that kind of similar, Like in every situation, there are two ways to look at it, And so in this Lojong mind training, it's always about training your mind to look more positive side, positively in everything. I think the Lojongs has been very strong influence in the Tibetan culture, this practice, in Tibetans, because those tribes are very, very strong during the Kadambas and letters, and especially at that time. So I think it's very much influence in the society, culture. So in Tibet, when something happening, there's always something to look, good expressions, and always something, when something burn down, or they say, oh, the fire is a good sign, is a going up, sign of progress, When something boil, it is sign of overflowing. So there is always, whenever something happens, not the best, they have something to in culture and in they have something positive to say about it, and not only say, that is how people look, and that is how you can keep your mind more positive despite all those different circumstances, challenges, Mm. When you have some events, big events, you have been planning for months or maybe even years, outside big events, and then started the rain, it started to snow, normally we would be very upset and, kind of feel like everything's kind of, but again, that Tibetans, it's a good sign, it's auspicious. It's very auspicious, the Nagas are happy. It's a sign of spirit and happy, rain, snows. So on one way, this is something you have been looking forward, that you have been planning, and things now you have to make different, not the same way. But again, at the same time, you didn't become so negative about it because you see, it's a good sign, it's an auspicious sign, So there is that kind of approach. And that is that kind of approach. And I think that is where we have to learn in every situation to see in that kind of approach, whether actually the Naga or spirit are really happy or not. But in your mind, because there's more positive outlook at that, regardless of that, your mind is more positive and less negative. Otherwise, your mind can be very negative in those situations, very, very unhappy, feel like everything's being ruined, So, yeah, I think, like in Bodh Gaya, there was a big pujas, ceremony for material project one time. And I think there was a lot of, butter lamps in part of that, and also lights everywhere. And I think something happened and it started to kind of burn, a lot of big tangas and all that, and then many of those senior monks had, it's a very good sign. It's a sign of progress that these projects is because the fire goes up. It's a sign of up going better, and that is in culturally in that mindset, there is that. And so then, your mind become more positive instead of negative for having burned out. And so that's what is how to transform, which lead to suffering to normal people, those who practice Lojong. It doesn't lead them to negative and pain, but it helps them to be more positive and not, so that is how we transform from suffering to happiness. Something that will lead to suffering and painful for ordinary beings, such practitioners, through such practice, it can lead them to more joyful and happiness by seeing something not negative, but something as a positive, From being cause, normally which lead to cause of, anger and, resentment, depression, kind of down, but practitioner or Lojong, through applying those practice, instead of that, it lead them to feel more compassion, open up their compassion, you know. So that is what the Lojong is. And we can train to that. Normally, if we don't train, then when those things happen, we can be angry, upset, depressed, all these different negative feelings, thought. But someone who really practice those Lojong and they really apply and practice, instead of that, it helped them to become more kind, more compassion. It helped them to, it's okay. No, he noticed the other one coming. Whether he felt it or he saw it. Yeah. So, so instead, Lojong practitioner, by applying it helped them to, open awaken their compassion, and so that, and thereby leading to enlightenment. So that is what you try to practice. Yeah, Thai, did you hear the teachings? Are you practicing? um, so saying I'm trying. And so, that is many of the teachers, says, like obstacles are a good, to encourage, our practice. And it is, when things go so smooth, sometimes we forget the practice. We become distant from the practice. Check it out. When things go well, we get distracted with so many other things. There's so much to get distracted. We forget the practice. We get distant from the practice. But then when some obstacle arises, then it kind of reminds you need to practice. Bring you closer to the practice. It really, make you really practice harder. So in that sense, from spiritual point of view, in terms of, practicing the Dharma, in terms of working with your mind, those obstacles are very helpful because it helps you to be more close to the practice. It helps you to bring less distractions to others, and then it helps you to become more serious about the practice. So when you look from that, then you can say, oh, obstacles are not bad from spiritual point of view. From that, they are helpful, beneficial. So when you see it is helpful, beneficial from that point of view, you don't have to be so unhappy about it. And if you are not unhappy about it, there will be less anger arising from that. Or less depressed. Either way, sometimes we go other way, or both. Less of that because you are not so unhappy about that, because you see something good. There's something good in that because it's helping in our practice. So, that. Also, the teacher says, the sufferings are obstacle, problem sufferings are like a broom, or vacuum, Broom and vacuum help to clean up all the garbage, And so those problem, obstacles, sufferings are like the broom, the vacuum that cleans all the garbage of our negative karma, so that there is no more negative garbage in our mind stream, so that our mind stream is clean and clear, like clean house. You know, at the moment there's too much garbage, you know, and it's hard to clean up those garbage. And so therefore again saying, oh, it's good because whatever obstacles, whatever suffering, whatever problem I'm going through now is cleaning up all this garbage. So that there's less garbage in my mind now in the futures. So again, when you see that as something helpful, meaningful in terms of cleaning the garbage in your mind, so again, you see something positive. Is a discomfort something? It is something uncomfortable, something discomforting, but at the same time, it's meaningful, helpful, because it's cleaning all this garbage. So then again, then you don't have a strong aversion to that. If you don't have a strong aversion as you had before, when you don't see it as something meaningful, then again, you don't get so upset because of that. Or you don't get so, your mind demotivated or down because of that, because you don't see that as not as bad, because you see something positive, goodness in that, Also the masters, the great master practitioners, also this problem and, obstacles, sufferings are like a, to see as a blessing of your gurus, blessing of the Buddhas, not as a curse. At the moment, we seem to feel like they are a curse, almost like curse, What did I do wrong to have this curse? Instead, the masters try to look it as a blessing. So, blessing in disguise. Seeing that. Short term, there's a little bit of discomfort, unpleasant feeling regarding that, but in long term, it is a blessing. So again, seeing it as a blessing, and you never know. There is many stories, and I think not only stories, probably even if you reflect in your life, probably you have similar experiences, In my own cases, there are certain experiences when that happened itself, maybe it wasn't so you're embracing or you're welcoming with so much joy in that moment, because it wasn't so pleasant. It wasn't so comfortable. It was uncomfortable. It wasn't so pleasant. But now when I look back, those are the, the blessings. Those are the blessings. Now I can see why they are blessings. Maybe I might not have been able to see in that moment itself, And probably many of you might have some small experience like that, And so that being the case, whatever we are experiencing now, whatever challenges, problem, difficult, even though we might not be able to feel it as a blessing in this moment, but it can be the blessings. Just as that one, I couldn't feel blessing at that moment, Mm. And it's not just one event, many, experiences in your life have been like that, there's a one stories, of, I don't know whether it's based on true story or it is just a story to help to understand the the moral, the practice of that. There is a story of a king and his minister, wise minister, and the king liked to hunt. They used to go in the forest to hunt. Old, very, very long time stories. And when he go to the hunting, he used to take this wise, very trusted minister with him. And in one of those hunting, the tiger attacked the king, and in that he lost his finger. One of fingers. And then of course, and then the trusted wise ministers said, that might have been the best thing that to happen to king, you know. And the king wasn't very happy about to hear that, that you lose your fingers and then you have this pain and all of that, and then someone to tell you that this could have been the best thing that could happen to you, And it didn't go well with the king. He was very upset. He was angry, and he thought that was, and so, he thought he was being bad, And so he put him into the prison, for saying that kind of things, And so he was put in the prison, Then the king continued to, hunt again, going with the others, And another time, again, they went for hunting and they went in the deep in jungles, and then they were caught by cannibals, The king was caught by the cannibals, and then they had a ceremony to do before, killing, eating, And when they went through the ceremony, they saw his finger missing, So then part of there, if there's some limbs missing, they couldn't do that, So they let him go, because of missing of that. Otherwise, he would have been dead, And so they let him go because of the missing of the finger. Then he suddenly remembered about the comment the wise, trusted minister made. This could have been the best thing that could, and in this moment, that was the case. If he hasn't lost his finger, he will be gone. He suddenly remembered that, and then he went to see the ministers, and and release him. And what he said was true. He was a wise man. He knew what was happening or whatever, and that what he said was true, and then the minister, and then he said, "I'm sorry, that I put you in the prison and all of that." And then the minister said, "Putting me in the prison might have been the best thing that could happen to me." And the king got a little bit annoyed again, And then he said, "How could it be the best thing that could happen to you to put you in a prison?" And he said, "If you have not put in prison, you would have taken me with you, because you always take me to the hunting with you, and I will be the guy with the cannibals who will have, taken my life." And then King thought about it, it makes sense, and he thought he was indeed wise. But what the whole story is that in that moment, it doesn't feel like it's the best thing that could happen to you. But when you think long term, that could have been the best thing that could happen to you. It did happen in both the king and uh, the minister in both cases. Even though at the time when the king lost a finger, doesn't feel like it was the best thing that could happen. When the minister put in the prison, doesn't seem it was best thing, but in the long term, it happens. And that is another example of what we call blessing in disguise. In long term, it's a blessing. In short term, it comes in not such a good way, nice way. And so that is similarly that we try to see whatever happens, any kind of obstacle, any kind of challenges, any kind of suffering that could manifest or arise, and we try to see is a blessing of the gurus, is a blessing of the Buddhas, it's a blessing of that. If we are able to see and if we are able to feel that the blessing, then again, we don't have that strong reactions, aversions. If you don't have a strong negative reaction and aversions, then again, there's no need to get disturbed, your mind. Your mind doesn't get disturbed. Whatever discomfort that might be physically or wherever, that might not go away, but mentally you don't get disturbed, agitated, upset, angry, and all of that. So, and especially, I think in those training the mind, especially looking your own life and then seeing, I have experienced that many times, with your own experience saying, oh, at that time I didn't feel that was good, but it turned out it was good, and I have many experience. And this could be same like that. Even though I cannot see how it is beneficial to me now, but it could be beneficial in long term because I have already had that experience many times. So it is not like just you are trying to see someone's experience, but with your own experience, it becomes more real, more closer, using your own example, become more, help you to understand and feel more of that. And as Shantideva mentioned, in his Guide to Both Ways of Life, those obstacles, problems, suffering are not always bad as we think. They are not bad as we think. Especially when you are looking from the spiritual point of view, from the Dharma practice point of view. As Shantideva said, because of our sufferings and the obstacle and challenges, problem, it helps us to be more grounded. Sometimes we become, arrogant, when everything goes fine, no problem, no pain, no challenges, no obstacles, everything fine, then we can be floating, we can be arrogant. One can be led into sense of arrogance, sense of, and also distractions, a lot of distraction, as we mentioned before. I think probably you might have found yourself, sometimes I see among students, sometimes I see with myself, when everything's fine, you have more distraction to do other things and no time for the Dharma. You have too many distractions. But when something goes not so well, obstacle something, then you are able to find more time for practice because you feel like you need the practice. That is how it helps from being help to be less arrogant, less pride, and more grounded, more humble. It helps to be more humble. When yourself is having all these problems, then you don't feel I'm better than others. You feel sometimes I'm the worst. Sometimes, that is how we go. That is even not good. Feeling I'm the worst. When you are feeling bad in that, but at least it helped to reduce that kind of sense of superiority, arrogant, and make us more humble and more grounded. So, so from that perspective, then it is helpful, beneficial. It's not as bad as that we normally think. Also, as Shandeva mentioned, without the sufferings, there's no way we can develop pure renunciation from the samsara. Without the renunciations, there's no enlightenment, liberations, And when we go through all these problems, suffering, challenges, obstacles, then we begin to understand, how samsara, the nature of samsara is sufferings. Otherwise, we hear all these teachings, we read the nature of samsara, samsara is suffering, and we think, how is that? Life seems just fine. How is it sufferings? We don't have a deep understanding of what samsara is. Our understanding is very, very superficial and, very superficial on the very surface. We don't have a deep understanding. But when we go through some of those obstacles and pain and suffering, then those teachings become so real. The teaching becomes so real. It's not just kind of, intellectual, there's some teachings, but you see those teachings, I think when we are healthy, when you hear, everyone go through sickness, what does that mean? I haven't gone through so far, and I will not go, That's how you feel like. Aging, same, how does aging aging suffering, Because it feels like, oh, they are talking about something, it's not real. But when you actually reach that age, then you begin to see, oh, it's real. What the Buddha said was real about the aging, about the sickness. When you are actually experiencing the sickness, then you see it's real. All that, the teachings become real. And it isn't just ideas, concepts. That's not something not happening to you, not related. And so again, because of that, then it really helped us to a better understanding of nature of the samsara. Through better understanding of that, then we develop really sense of wanting to free from the samsara, not just the word, but from depth. You feel unless I'm able to free from the samsara, there is no permanent end to all these problems and sufferings. So you develop a strong kind of, mind that want to, turn away from the samsara and not being attached to samsaric experience, even is a pleasure. At the moment, we are willing to turn away from the samsara as long as it's samsaric sufferings. But when it's samsaric pleasure, we are very attached to it, Because again, we haven't really understood the depth, on the depth level, what samsara is. So again, it helped us to develop that. Also, if there's, because of the suffering, it helped, as we said at the very beginning, as Shandeva said, it helped us to develop compassion for others. If we use properly, in the right way, because our own pain, then it helped us to understand the pain of others. Otherwise, if you have not experienced pain, when someone says someone is experiencing pain, you don't sometimes relate what are they talking about. You don't think the pain is so, are they just overacting, exaggerating? You might feel they are exaggerating. You might feel they are overacting, overreacting, because you don't know what it is, how painful it is to be in that state, in that kind of situation, because you have not experienced it sometimes. But once you have experienced it, then you know what it is like to be in that situation, and that's pain and that's suffering. So then you have better ability to understand and feel the pain and suffering of others. And when you have better ability to understand and feel the pain and suffering of others, then you are able to feel more compassion for others. So therefore, it helps you to, again, develop compassion because of it. So again, when you look from that perspective, again, sufferings are not always bad. Especially from a spiritual point of view, they are very helpful, beneficial for our spiritual growth. From ordinary point of view, maybe it is hard to see something positive, but if you look from spiritual point of view, it's really very, very helpful. The suffering are more helpful than the happiness. The obstacles are more helpful than success for the spiritual. That is why some of the Kadamba masters, they make, may I never have success, may I have all the failures. May I never have a happiness, may I always have sufferings. That is the kind of prayer they make. Opposite of what we make, because they find the others opposite, which we find very strong dislike and aversion, they find that very helpful in their spiritual practice for them to grow, on spiritually. And so therefore they make that kind of prayers, so therefore, Kadamba masters. Kadamba. Yeah, Kadamba masters. Kadamba is almost like a lineage. Yeah, Kadamba lineage. We do say Kadamba lineage. And it started around 10 centuries with the Adisha, Adisha Dibamkara was a great Indian master who came to Tibet at that time. He was begged him to many times to come by the one king of one western part of Tibet at that time. Maybe not necessarily king, but like kind of he has a royal kind of royal lineage and a leader in that area, and so Adisha came, and then and then from then that the Kadamba kind of lineage started there, and the text that it was wrote by like Geshe Chekawa, 7 forms of mind training that we are studying, also 8 verses of mind training by Geshe Langtethamba. They all are Kadamba masters. They were very strong Lojong practitioners. So anyway, so that is so yeah, so anyway, they do that because they see those are really very powerful circumstances, situation for their spiritual growth, their individual spiritual growth, for the growth of their path. So that is why, also some of many Kadamba masters says, transform out of this, transform the enemy into friend, or sorry, friend, spiritual friend. spiritual teacher or guru. And again, the Kadamba masters, if you see, your enemies are the worst, the best spiritual teachers. Are the best teachers. I always give this example, even in our normal educations, there are practical teachers, there are theoretical teachers and practical teachers. Yeah. Theoretical teacher explain in a classroom how to cook, how to garden. You learn from that, how much soil you need, what kind of water, all different. Practical teacher take you into the garden or field and make you do it. Whether it's cooking or whether it's gardening or anything. And where you learn most in the practical field. That's where you really learn to be good at that, whether it's cooking, whether it's gardening or any other things. Theoretical teaching give you some ideas. You have a little bit of background, good foundation, but it is in practical teaching where you get same way, our normal teachers who explain you how to practice, give you all the advice, instructions. They are the theoretical teachers. Your enemy is your practical teachers. The enemy say, you have learned a lot about compassion, patience. Now let's see. I know you have learned a lot about patience in your classroom, in this Gomba, in your book. You have read a lot, you have heard a lot, you have meditated a lot. You have done all of this. You have learned a lot. I know you have learned a lot. Now let's see. So if you want to really be at patience, to be able to perfect the practice of patience and complete the practice of patience, then you need someone who make you not easy, difficult. And by applying the patience in that way, that is where you can really get good. If everyone is so nice, kind to you, no one trying to disturb you, everyone trying to be very kind, compassionate, listen to you all the time, how are you going to practice the patience? You might, and if you don't practice, how are you going to perfect it? And then, we might be deceiving ourselves, thinking I'm a patient person. You might think I'm a patient person because your surrounding, everyone's trying to make it nice, comfortable. So there's no reason to be upset. And because you don't get upset, because of the condition, you feel, oh, I'm a patient. Until someone comes and make you, and then you begin, oh, I'm not a patient. Isn't it? There is a stories of, practitioners, in Tibet, and he went in the cave or wherever in the mountains to do retreat practice for many months, And then he had a friend. There is one of the famous temple in Lhasa, Cho temple, and where people do different practices around there. And one of friends, he knew that he was going circumambulation, and he saw that friend he had not seen for a long time on the corner. And then, oh, I haven't seen you for a long time. What have you been doing? And he said, no, well, I just went into the mountains to do some practice, meditation practice. And he said, what were you practicing on? And he says, I've been trying to meditate and practice on patience. And then his friend says, really? Then you eat, the cow shit, And then that person who just came from the retreat says, you eat the cow shit. because he got upset. And then his friend said, so is that the patient that you just could practice? And that is what can happen. Because in that, there was no one to disturb him, annoy him. And so he thought he was doing well, because he wasn't get upset and angry and disturbed, because there was no one who was making him upset and angry. And he thought he was doing quite well with the patients until he came there and someone chased him. And then to recognize that. And so that is where, because he didn't have enemy there to disturb him. So even he thought he was practicing on patient, but because he didn't have the real opportunity to really put into the practice. And from that perspective, again, that is how we know, if you really want to be good at practices as patient, then you need that kind of situations, challenging, difficult, situations or individuals that doesn't make easy, and there where you really have to put practice, you really have to work hard. And if you can then put in a lot of hard work and really practice, then definitely you can perfect. And then later, no matter how persons behave, act, you wouldn't be disturbed anytime, And so so from that perspective, that is those challenges, difficult, pains, problematics, enemy, how they become the best teachers, Same things in terms of patience, in terms of cultivating great compassion, bodhicitta, in meditation on great compassions or great loving kindness, bodhicitta, we start with trying to generate compassion, unconditional compassion to your loved one. Then you expand to the strangers. Then you expand to the enemy. And then you expand to all sentient beings. That is how we train, starting with a loved one, stranger, enemy, and everyone's, in order to develop great compassions, loving kindness, and bodhicitta. That is what we learn, that is what we try to meditate, practice. Now this enemy is saying, you have been trying to generate in your meditations, you have been trying to generate compassion to the enemy. Now let's see if you can do that for me. Let's see if you can develop true compassion to me, unconditional compassion to me, as you have been doing in your meditations, visualizing meditations. See whether you can really do now. Whether it's loving kindness, whether it's compassion, whether it's bodhicitta. So that person really put you on the spot in terms of your practice. Until then, we might feel, oh, I'm able to feel compassion too. We might be thinking, oh, I'm able to feel compassion, all sentient beings, until that person's put you in the spot. Let's do it. Can you have compassion to me? Unconditional true compassion to me? Can you have a loving kindness? Bodhicitta? Then we begin to say, oh, I have a long way to go. To realize I have a long way to go, again, is good. That person helped us to evaluate where we are in terms of practice and how much we need to work on, how much we need to go on. Sometimes we might not be aware of that, not being able to evaluate ourselves, where we are and how much we need to work and how far there is still a long way to go. So again, such enemy, help us to know, where our practice is, how much, what level our practice in, and how much there's a long way to go and all of that. So again, in that sense, it's very helpful, beneficial. Sometimes in different areas, you hire people who are experts to evaluate yourself, how I'm doing, my health-wise, physical health, emotional health, or in my business, or in my different field. You hire and pay to evaluate so that you can improve, isn't it? So this enemies is helping you to evaluate your practice without having to pay. So again, just as we will be appreciative someone who will help us to evaluate, same way, this person is helping us to evaluate our practice. And so we appreciate that, and then when you appreciate that, because it's helping that so many different ways, then, again, you don't get so upset and angry because you don't see it as so harmful and negative, but there is positive things from there, good things, positive things, if you look from the spiritual point of view, especially, And so that is, these are some example of different way of transforming, problem, challenges, difficulty, obstacles, sufferings into the path to awakening your compassion, awakening your loving kindness, awakening your bodhicitta, transform into the path to enlightenment, help us to, transforming in that. Okay, so I think that is with the third point. I think still. Maybe today we stop here. Otherwise, any questions? Yes, please. I think there are a couple of them. Teresa and Nancy there.
Geshe, I don't know if you've heard this term spiritual bypass. Do you know that?
I think I've heard.
I'm wondering about how to, look at the positive, transform, maybe not spiritual bypass, pretend everything's fine.
Mm-hmm. Pretending everything is being fine and feeling everything is fine is different. Okay. Pretending being patient and really being patient is different. Pretending being a compassion and being really having compassion is different. So, a lot of time we pretend we are patient. Inside, we are upset and angry. Outside, we don't say anything. We don't respond, we don't react. We just keep quiet. We don't try to. From outside, it looks like he's or she's patient because she didn't kind of react as response to someone's harmful actions or whatever that is. But inside, there's a lot of anger and boiling and that. So that means it's not patience. Patience is something inside, In same way, we can pretend everything's fine. How are you? I'm fine. Inside you are not fine. You are so unhappy. You have, you feel like this shouldn't happen or this should happen. My life should be that way, not this way or this. So inside it doesn't feel fine on different levels, but outside we might say, okay, I'm fine. And that is pretending, but it's not really being fine inside. From inside, if you are really, really satisfied, happy, and fine, and nothing seems to bother, then that wouldn't be that spiritual bypassing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is there an
that-
order?
that's-
Oh, over here. Okay. Over here. Oh, we have one here too. I'm gonna take Jan. Excuse me. Yes. Okay.
So Geshe, this isn't meant to be a real educational question, but are these any of the Kadampa masters?
No, these are Lama Tsongkhapa's, you know, 15 main deeds, you know. So if you read his biography, you know, of course there are many different biography, you know, and in one of the biography by one of his disciple, which describe about all his, you know, inner spiritual qualities and realizations. According to them, there are some of the main kind of, you know, his deeds, and so those, I don't know who ordered that, and then someone painted those according to that, and then, you know, it has been kind of shared and had. So yeah, that is what it is. So yeah.
So is there anything in this room that reflects the Kadampa masters' presence in Tibetan Buddhism?
Lama Tsongkhapa's lineage is known as New Katambas. So you can say Katambas, but not older Katambas. We used, I don't know, others Katamba master we have here.
The sutras.
Others, in the teachings, yes.
And
In some teachings, yes.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there is a free book on, I think by Lama Sopa Rinpoche, yeah, on Kadamba's teachings. And Lama Sopa Rinpoche are very strong Kadamba's practitioners, you know, very, very strict Kadamba practitioners, you know, yeah. And Kadamba's, some of the practice can be little tough for some peoples, you know, as I mentioned, is like they will be more happy to have suffering than happiness. They will be more happy to be sick than healthy. They will be more happy to lose than gain. They will be more happy to get criticism than the praise. You know, so therefore for us, some of us, you know, sometimes it might not be so easy, but that is how they practice, to really kind of dealing with the ego, you know, crushing the ego, you know.
Thank you. The only reason that I brought it up is that, I mean, these pictures, these have been here or at other sites where TNL has been the whole time.
Yeah,
And to me, it's like every single piece in this room has history and teachings and represents what you represent. So it's, I thank you.
thank you. I think I don't remember one year when Lama Zopa Rinpoche came, then he gave these pictures, and then we started a frame and put it, you know. So I think that was quite a long time ago, when during the one of the Rinpoche's visit, he gave those pictures. Yeah.
Here's the book that referred to. There's a bunch of copies. I'll just leave one here. Who's next? Okay.
Old.
Okay, so
Susan.
Susan.
Thank you, Geshe, for the teachings. So in this particular teaching, what you've said, there's kind of two perspectives. If something devastating or bad happens, you can see it negatively, or you can turn it positively. I'm wondering if there's anything in any of the teachings that talk about finding the lesson in the negative circumstance in order to turn it positive. And the example I have is when I lived in Bali in Indonesia, I wasn't there at the time. We might remember, some people might remember, they had a bombing in Kuta. And Kuta was a particular village that had a lot of drugs, and it was known for like being a tourist town, and it wasn't very quote unquote Balinese. And after this bombing happened, the priests came out and gave a statement. And they said that this was a lesson for us to see that we don't want to allow this kind of activity on the island. It's adharmic. We want to start to transform that village. So they didn't say, oh, this was a good thing necessarily, but they said this is the lesson. So anyway, I keep having that question. Thank you.
Yes, I think, we learn from mistakes, whether as an individual or as a collective, sometimes due to our actions, individually, collectively, then there's a consequences, negative consequences of that on individual level or on collective level, within the family, within the neighborhood, within the state, within the country, within the world, so different level of collective karmas, collective actions. And due to sometimes on individual, sometimes on collective level of wrong decisions, wrong actions, mistaken actions, then we experience different pain, suffering, challenges. Definitely, we have to learn from that. It is always, we learn from the past mistake so that we don't make the mistake again in the future. So we learn from that and we don't allow it to happen. While we learn from that, at the same time, it's about keeping your mind in negative state or positive state. Of course, there is learning part, and so that we don't make the same mistake in the future. There's that one part. But other part is, do I want to be either like angry and upset because of that, or sometimes the other is that we become very harsh and negative on oneself situation and become depressed and mind very low. That is the negative state of mind, either anger, hatred, or either very down and depressed and all of that. Or we can keep our mind more positive, neither fall into anger and hatred, neither we go into depression and kind of low, instead keep positive, So how we do that is, I want to be in positive state and I want to have compassions and all of come just wishing. You have to see, you have to change the perceptions about the situations. When you have negative perceptions, then you get negative feeling because of that. When you are able to change that perception by seeing more positive instead of negative, same situation, but you change your perception by looking from different point of view. And when you look from different point of view with a different and change the perception, then positive can then, compassion can grow and other positive state can grow. So that is where the training is. The training is how to, instead of allowing to be in negative state normally, which goes, how to keep our mind more positive. Not only positive, how can we turn this situation to develop more spiritual realization, whether it's a renunciation, whether it's a compassion, all of that, So
you would see it that that's what the priests were trying to do, was shift the perspective to how we could see it more positively by having the lesson of it.
I cannot say what the priest has in his mind, and that for sure, but that definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we can do dedications, yeah.
Dedication prayers. May all sentient beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And then the long life prayer for His Holiness. Gangri Rawe Korwe Jinkam Dir Pendan Dewa Malu Jungwe Ne Chen Raising Wa Tenzin Gyatso Yi Jape Si Te Bardu Tengyo Chi.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.